Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Hospitality Marketing, a live show number 245 with us. And if you don't recognize the girl on the right or left, whatever way your screen looks, that is the mysterious, the elusive, the very rare Stephanie Smith. And I don't mean to introduce her before our special guest co-host, but it appears that she only shows up when we have Griffin. So that's how special our special co-host is, Mr. Griffin Sandberg. With Screen Pilot, but before I get there, I can't tell you, but I wanted to introduce you. I had this whole cool introduction until Stephanie came in and just made it all go upside down. Was the man that lived, because you're the only one I directly know that went through COVID-19 and survived. So it's like, Griffin Door. I'm wondering if do you speak Parso tongue? I mean, what's going on?
Absolutely, been training for years. I'm now an expert on COVID. It's come up a few times, and honestly, the story that I want to give to everyone is that if anybody out there goes through it and wants someone to connect with, I'm more than here and happy to connect with anybody, because a lot of what you need throughout of it is just peace of mind. Don't tell your family. They start sending you articles like 24-year-old in perfect health dies 3 days later. It does not help. And then you go, is that chest pain or is that anxiety? What's going on?
Yeah. But when you told us this was just so offhanded. It's like, I went to the grocery. I had COVID-19, was in the intensive care unit. I'm like, what?
Yeah, I know. It's kind of I treat it nonchalantly now, and I think it helped a lot to kind of in bouncing back as quick as possible. Still have breathing issues. They have me on albuterol. We'll have that checked out, once things blow over. Right now, there's no way to get in and get any kind of chest scan or anything like that. But the further I get away from it, the better I feel. It was quite the trip. And do know, I guess, the only note to people is that, note a lot of the stories that you read that are scary are very much outliers. It is absolutely a scary thing, but the stories are outliers to the majority of the data that people are able to recover at home and bounce back. So I say that to anyone who is fearful, anyone who's out there in groups right now. It is very scary. Stay inside, please.
We should bring some more people of that at that particular point. But yes, but no, it's a pleasure to have you as our special co-host. Also with us, Mr. Dean Schmidt, by the way. I think you know Dean, don't you? Or if not, Dean Schmidt, Derbysoft, Griffin Sandberg.
Pleasure to connect here.
Pleased to meet you.
Yeah. Dean's one of those smart people.
I almost didn't when Lauren invited me to come on video. I almost said no because I know I'm a little scruffy today, but that's all right.
Oh yeah, okay.
I know. I took one look at Lauren and said, "Oh, it's okay."
Right. I mean, I'm going for I'm waiting for this to go into a ponytail, and I'm going to go for that crazy ponytail, bearded old man at the end of the bar that nobody wants to talk to. That's my goal. That's my goal. Anyway, all right. It's all about you. It's all about Screen Pilot. It's all about what you want to talk about in the universe, intercomplexities, ultimate realities, explain the universe, whatever you want. It's you. Go ahead. Tell us the meanings of the universe, please.
Absolutely. And as we're all figuring it out and refiguring it out right now, right? I think just with all the uncertainty out there, me jumping in with that, right? Personally, we all have our own uncertainty on what's going to be happening. But then as an industry as well, there's a lot of anecdotal stories going around, both in terms of, hey, Tim. Hey. Both in terms of, what is happening with the world and COVID, but then what is happening in the industry as well. A lot of it seemed, for the first couple of weeks, it was understandable that it would be all anecdotal. But now that there's been enough time behind us, what we're trying to do at Screen Pilot is give our clients and the industry something stable to stand on. So we're obviously, data is the backbone of everything that we do. So we've been diving into as many different data points as we can to figure out not only what's going on right now, but what is the guest sentiment around traveling again. And a lot of that, there are different studies that are out there. A lot of stories are out there. There's still some anecdotal that comes in, but there is some hard data that we can base things off. So right now, we have, if anybody afterwards wants to check out our content hub, I know there's a lot of different COVID resource centers that are out there. We have a really robust one going that really, really proud of the team for putting together in such a short turnaround and staying on top of. Obviously, we're moving at 100 miles an hour right now, but in order to help our clients in the industry slow down and stay on something stable. So,
Are you able to keep your team together?
what's that?
Have you been able to keep your team together?
Yes,
Good.
which has been a blessing. We've done everything that we can to make sure everyone's going strong. Everyone's working remote right now, so that took another few days of getting used to. We're all used to having all 30 people in house in Denver, Colorado, and it's nice. I like this too, though. Got my puppy right by my side, so things are good. So yeah, it probably just took a few days to get things rolling along. A lot of difficult phone calls. I know we were talking about that when Ed was on the call the other day too. There's difficult phone calls we've had to have, but internally, there's no time to look back. It's all about looking forward right now. It's about having a plan for our properties when things are ready to ramp up and get going again. And so that's internally, but publicly, what we're trying to put out there is certain signals that properties can follow to know when that time is, when it's ready, when they're ready to pounce and when they're ready to get back into the market and hopefully get in early and steal away some market share as well. So certain aspects that we're looking into, I think one of the biggest tells is going to be on the branded search side. So right now, when we look at the OTAs, they've heavily dropped out on those branded search terms. We're still seeing them when it comes to the unbranded searches, and trying to figure out, when is the optimal time to get in, when is it going to be profitable for clients to get in on those unbranded terms. Because yes, the cost per clicks are a lot lower, but the conversion rate's a lot lower as well. Is it going to be worth it? Is it going to be costing more than that OTA commission would be? What are cancellation rates looking like? As we're kind of taking that into account as things are changing over time. But on the branded side, I think that is going to be one really, really, really big heads up that things are bouncing back. Whether it's permanent or it's just part of a roller coaster that we're going to be on for a while. If the OTAs are bidding on those branded terms and we're seeing them come in for each of our properties, and we want to let the industry know to keep an eye on that. If they're not working with us, to keep an eye on their branded search term and comparing them with the OTA bids there. Once they start ramping up right there, that is the OTA is saying, okay, people are at the bottom of the funnel now, brand aware, ready to book. And this is one of those times where we can take advantage of the OTAs being these behemoths with massive budgets and the technology to figure that out. So we're pairing it up with our own data, but also, taking lead from the leaders in the industry.
Yeah. It's funny as I go around, we have all these coffee chats and happy hours and everybody's trying to keep communicated by doing Zoom and, all these other things and so forth. And as more and more people get exposed to the show and so forth, they keep asking, it's like, so when you're talking with everybody on there, it doesn't sound like you guys are competing or something. It's like, they don't understand that really there's a big ocean and that we're all little boats and we all have plenty of business and so forth. And we all do our own thing in a different way. And it's enjoyable to hear. I like Ben Henley, by the way, is over in the UK. He's a great guy. Actually, if he wants to join, he's more than welcome to. He was formerly with Travel Tripper and so forth. And you get to meet these really cool people, but you get to talk and realize that everybody has a unique twist on things. I mean, you guys are unique in your own way, which I want to make sure we hit, because it's so easy just to talk about the here and the now, and this is what you're doing now. But when there was a different world like 3 weeks ago, when we thought there was some normality to it, a little bit of what Screen Pilot's mission was. Like, what was it that you guys were focused on? What is it that you guys approached the market as and so forth? I mean, you don't build a team of 30 people on nothing. So, I mean, where'd you guys come from?
Where did Screen Pilot? That's a great question. And to reiterate kind of the point of camaraderie too, before jumping in on Screen Pilot, I think it's really important right now. We're hopping on with Fuel later today with their podcast. Stuart is a great guy. We've been thanking him for getting that going. Honestly, we've been fans of that podcast for years. I think when we think of competition in the space, we think of the agencies that are not doing a good job. That's what we see as competition. That's what we see as impeding business, because they set a bad standard of what a digital marketing agency is in this space, and they make it an uphill battle for us. Places like Fuel Travel that are doing good work, honestly, even before all this happened, we've been cheering them on. We all have our own space, right? And if we're doing good and doing right by client, that makes all of our jobs a lot easier. So, but yeah, I mean, great question. Where does Screen Pilot come from? it's, Simon Sinek has the new why, right? That's been going around for years, and that's really where the conversation came from. It was not the what. Digital marketing agencies, everyone. If you're going in a 30-minute presentation of what you do, it's all the same thing, right? And high level 30,000-foot view on strategy is going to be exactly the same. Pricing is going to be pretty similar. Although it's really hard to compare apples to oranges, right? we all have our own terminology, and we make it confusing for everybody. But it's similar enough. The why for us is just we heard too much. Tom started as a consultancy 14 years ago. Our CEO, Tom Dibble, and he was hearing a lot of feedback on just this ticketed system that people were being moved through, spending thousands of dollars a month for. Just a ticketed system where they're pushing things through, not getting any kind of feedback, clawing for answers, clawing for ideas. So really the responsiveness and the knowledge beyond the numbers that we can get for people, that's really what our why was, is let's become an extension of the in-house team for the properties that we work with, give them peace of mind. Ownership is reaching out. They have a drop-in group in his business and they want to know what's going on the digital marketing front. You need someone there that can actually tell you that, right? Not just throw a bunch of data at you and hope you find a pretty story yourself. So that's really, it's kind of the spiel that a lot of agencies will give, but it's truly what sets us apart and the why of what gets us up every day is to be an extension of the teams. And that's why we're feeling it right now. Honestly, we're feeling what our properties are going through. When we hop on happy hours, sometimes it's tough to get the happy in the happy hour because we feel for our properties. A lot of our customers have been here for years, weekly connecting with these properties, and it's tough, but it's what gets us up in the morning, and that's why we're here. So,
well, I have to give you a compliment also. Well, all of us, in collaboration one way or another, I think all of us in the conversations have been trying to be as helpful with everybody as possible. But you've also been as open as everybody, like Stuart and Ed and Tim and Stephanie. We've been sharing our best practices together. It's not like we're saying, "Oh, I can't tell you that. That's what we do." No, it's like it's like, "Hey, what can I do? What can I help?" And that's been probably one of the greatest joys out of all of this is that I've gotten to know you better. I've gotten to know just all my friends better from a business perspective. Where it's nice to on the show to hear perspectives of how they approach things, but then it's also nice to have to dialogue about specific things and hear honest answers, not elusive. Well, that's our thing we do and things like that. It's been really a joy to get to broaden that. And that's why I like Ben so much also. Stu said, he has kids crawling all over him, so he can't join us. But one of the other guys that just candid people, Dean's been fantastic. He's been feeding me wonderful metadata. Thank you, Dean.
I've got some fresh data for you, by the way. We'll get to
that. Love data. But anyway, so I'm sorry, but it has been kind of fun. So that's what.
If I can jump in and real quick on what Lauren was saying, by the way, and I do want to say, Griffin, I'm thrilled you're on the show today. When we talk about people sharing information and the like, I have said this to you before. You've gotten a couple of emails from me about this. The resources you all have put together as your content hub for this crisis, I think is the best done one I've seen. There are some other very good ones out there, but you guys are crushing it in terms of the kinds of information you're putting out there, the quality of information you're putting out there, the right tone of the information you're putting out there, and frankly, the way it's organized. It's really easy for people to get around and get useful tips of what they can be doing now to set themselves up for success right now and success as they go forward. So it's a really great thing to see, and I just think you guys deserve some really humble kudos for that.
Thank you, Tim. Honestly, yeah, as Tim mentioned, he sent a few emails to us. Our director of content marketing, Rachel Anderson, and everybody on the team has been hustling to give some peace of mind to the industry with that hub. And it truly, to bring it back to the human, the emotional side of it, those emails really meant a lot. So, absolutely.
They were deserved. Your team is doing really good.
Thank you. That means a lot.
I do have to make one technical comment. Tim, it sounds like the microphone's on your desk or something like that. Am I the only one, or is that
me?
No, Tim.
It's me. Well, it sounds like your microphone literally using the built-in mic on the computer right now.
Oh, that might be it. Maybe that's it. It just seems like it's a. Yeah, we heard you. It sounded a little different than the normal super deluxe Tim.
Yeah, not as clear as
the
normal Tim Peter.
Yeah, the Tim Peter super deluxe voice thing just wasn't there today. Anyway, sorry.
Well,
I
the
want to come
deluxe-
on the booth where I get your microphone, Lauren.
The super deluxe Tim Peter is this, but I
There
can't.
it is. There's the
But that
super
makes for really
Oh, man.
bad video.
All these one-ups.
Actually, Tim, your video just improved greatly with that.
All right, so I'm going to let you all in on a little secret, by the way. Is the audio okay now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I wear my glasses all the time on the show because that's the only way I can really see the screen. But today that's actually useful. We're in the middle of moving, and I got into something yesterday and had a terrible allergy attack. And so
Oh wow.
my
Oh,
eye
yeah.
it was swollen shut last night. So
Wow.
but it's really just allergies. I'm completely fine. I've taken a pill. Everything's going to be
Do
fine.
I?
Oh, no,
do
I'm
I
changing the
need,
story. I'm changing the
do
story
I
that
need
you
to
were
call
to
someone
Tammy
to
and-
separate Tammy from you? Tim,
You
Tim,
didn't
use
serve
our
her
normal
fast
safe
enough,
word if you need
fast
help.
enough, and there it was.
Yeah. But yeah, no, that was the joys of moving. You know, you uncover dusty stuff that's been sitting in a basement for a bunch of years, and suddenly, you find out, hey, it triggered my allergies, so that's good.
Hey, so
Sorry.
Griffin, on some of the content that you have, I try to read through it, and I don't always keep up on the latest with it for you because it's been busy the whole week and stuff. But what are some of the latest changes that you've come up with, or your team's come up with, and strategizing as to what would be the first steps that you're thinking about doing when we see this emergence opportunity? What are some of the things that you guys are considering? You talked about the brand terminologies and so forth, but what are some of the other things you guys are pondering as other useful tools in the toolkit for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think even right now, and I'm sure this conversation, if people are hopping on this podcast that have heard, but for right now, even getting ahead of the game on social media. Ed and I were talking about that in the HSMAI meetup recently. We don't have to think that far out. Right now, Facebook's user engagement is up significantly. It's not great for them. They have a lot of, their stock's not going to be great because the advertisers are dropping off. But in terms of an organic way of connecting with people, there's a lot of opportunity right now. And a lot of people are, I was reading, does anybody follow Scott Galloway, Prof G?
Yeah.
Love that guy. He's like the boy in the business. He's fantastic. But he put out a report recently that was showing, how heavily desktop traffic is up right now as well. So that kind of keeps us in mind on what kind of layouts, what kind of creative, what kind of conversation we're going to be looking for on social media, and also have the understanding that, with our independence, we could be harnessed in a good place when people are ready to book, because that is the device people are booking on. OTAs do really well on mobile, but with the process that you have with most, independent properties and the websites and the booking engines, it's still desktop where a lot of people are coming in from. So it's a bunch of the conversation right now is stocking that pipeline as much as you can and having that brand awareness out there, that once people are ready to move down that pipeline, your funnel's full. If we're seeing it from a sales perspective, right? It's hand in hand with marketing.
What are some of the stories you've been telling that have been successful that aren't salesy or how clean you are?
So
in regards to like inspiration stories from properties, or
I mean, I feel like,
So I have a few that because I've been compiling really good social positioning for a presentation I'm doing later this month, and I've kind of been putting them into themes. So I can talk to you about the themes too if you want. So some of the really good stuff I've seen is any property improvements that you're doing is doing before and afters of, look, we just finished this project, fresh new hallways and things like that. Those are getting a lot of engagement. I had one hotel that bailed out a couple getting married. So this couple had a wedding set up at a completely different hotel in another destination, and obviously it all got canceled. So they asked the hotel, could we use your beach to get married? So the hotel not only turned it around really last minute, they also had their staff sitting in chairs, so it had like a nice crowd look to it, and they live streamed it on Facebook for the couple, so their family could watch it on Facebook. And obviously, from live streaming it on Facebook, they got a ton of other views. So that was really strong. Jamaica Inn in Jamaica is got a crazy good content game. They're posting 3 different videos a day from different staff members. That's ranging from yoga to the property's dog, what they're up to today, to all these different things about what's going on in Jamaica. And we're seeing a lot of that type of stuff. We have a culinary resort in Vermont that their chefs that run the culinary school are doing daily cooking classes. Their yoga instructor is doing weekly live stream yoga. And all of that content is getting huge reach, huge interaction. But also it's soft selling the properties, because you're actually exposing the most important part of a property, which are the people and the experiences. So that type of stuff's doing incredibly well.
I think I agree, and that's what we want to. It depends on the capacity that people have on property right now, and who's there on what we can get live on property, and we want to be understanding of that. If we can get people on property to get your chefs out there and share some of their recipes and do Instagram live and share some of the favorite dishes from the property, absolutely. But I think even for anyone listening out there that is at capacity and is having a tough time kind of juggling a lot of the different things right now. One of the examples that I like that was simple, that we tend to forget about a lot, especially on social media, is ask your audience what they're looking for. So with 50 Bowery in New York City, we honestly put it out to Instagram and Facebook and social media asking the guests, what do you miss about property? And the resounding answer was, the New York City skyline, that iconic skyline. So we got full scale videos from the rooftop of people going around, showing empty New York, showing the pride of New York City, showing that beautiful skyline, and people loved it. It's not something that has to be a massive on-taking if you don't have the time, but take the time to check in with your guests, see how they're doing. Take the time to check in with people who are checking out your brand right now in the dreaming phase, and get them some inspiration.
Humor is going a long way right now as well.
We all need it.
Yeah, we one of our Key West partners who names every single one of their email communications a specific edition. They just released their Shelter at Home edition to their email. It's the highest open rate of any email they've ever sent. People found it funny. And it was very much about, we know you're missing Key West, we're missing you. We miss having fun together, and then they had some cool pieces of content inside that email. The click-through rates on it were incredibly high. So tasteful humor, that was a good, safe kind of, calling their email the Shelter at Home edition. Wasn't going to offend anyone. But it people definitely saw the lightheartedness in it.
I think in terms of what Screenplay has been putting out, some of the social media recommendations have been fairly strong. And I know you think every agency does the same thing, but maybe only me working with a lot of different larger agencies as a little guy and not having a big development team. I think Screenpilot does a good job at content marketing, and better and more so than some other agencies that are full service. So,
name names, Stephanie. Name names.
Name names.
Come on.
No, I did.
Call them out.
I did.
It was easy on the client side to work with. On the client side, when I had 100 hotels and most of them had websites, we probably worked with 10 agencies at every time. And I was like, okay, this one's better at this and this one's better at this. And it's just you can't be strong in everything, but so.
Exactly. It can never be master of none. That's why it's been a slow scale. I appreciate, believe me, I appreciate all the kind words from everyone here. It really means a lot. And our CEO would love it if we could talk about Screenpilot, but I do have a question for you, Stephanie, which is, I know you work with a lot of the some of the economy brands, right? And right now, are probably doing the strongest out there. Is there anything you've been seeing successful, that other sectors of the industry could learn from right now?
I mean, I think the ones that are of my smaller hotels, the ones that are doing the best right now are the extended stay properties, which seems fairly basic, but I still have a few extended stay properties that are, still have 50% occupancy, and they had it before, and it's just a, maintaining thing. So I don't really know how much you can glean off that. I have some of the, but I still have a fair amount of select service hotels that are running the 2 and 3% occupancies as my full service hotel. So, if you weren't able to, I've worked with, there's a whole like master list of websites that I have. If anybody's interested, it basically has all the nurses sites and all that. So if that's the type of business you're interested in, making sure that you're, have the proper rates loaded within the brand categories and things like that is an opportunity. But some hotels, obviously, sometimes it's hard to mix the two business models. So that's worked for a couple of hotels as well.
Griffin, you can't talk bad about Stuart, thinking that you're having to talk to him this afternoon since the Brady showed up and decided to get off the Gandalf look and clean himself up. And
I'd like to call out that Stuart, who was growing a fantastic beard, when he heard that Griffin was going to be on, was like, "Oh, I'm shaming."
Yeah,
He's like,
do it.
He's like, I'm not even going to be on.
I was liking the beard.
Yeah, my wife was not liking the beard, so it had to go. No.
Your wife was right, Stuart. You looked like crap.
Yeah.
It's so much nicer to see your pretty face now. So.
Thanks, Tim. I can always count on you, Tim, to shoot me straight.
Exactly. I'm just looking out. I'm looking out for your best interest, actually.
That's right.
So,
What's the topic for you guys for the afternoon podcast?
You want to say that, Griffin? It's your episode. The
What's
topic
the
for the
topic for
podcast.
this afternoon?
Sure. Actually, I'm going to have Alyssa Larson, our director of paid media, on the call, and we're going to be diving deeper into the aspects that we kind of started the call off with of what kind of signals we're looking for. Really, the general theme of it is going to be, investors are looking at the stock market right now, looking for their signals, looking at the VIX, seeing what the volatility is, all these different factors they're looking at. We're trying to figure out what signals ownership and people on property can look at right now that will make it profitable to get back into the market on the paid media side. So Alyssa will be there and jumping in and taking a deeper dive on those aspects.
I think Alyssa's with us, actually.
Awesome.
If she wants to join, Alyssa, you want to join in and chatter with us? Or you just want to do yourself on the side and make funny faces at us? You can do that too. We'll see if she pops up in chat.
Yeah.
By the way, folks, I apologize. I only jumped on for the first half hour today because I have a commitment, but I wanted to talk to Griffin and see you guys. I'm being committed. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. No, but I wanted to just check in with everybody and hope you all have a great, healthy, happy weekend and look forward to seeing you all next week. Griffin, great seeing you. I'm looking forward to hearing your and Stuart's podcast. I'm sure it's going to be a rocking.
Yep. Always great seeing you, Tim.
Have fun moving.
Yes, I won't be here next week. I will be in the thick of the move next week. So
and make sure you start doing it a little faster so you don't miss that backhand.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. All right. Cheers, folks. I'll see you next week.
Bye, Tim.
I'll see you in 2 weeks, rather. Bye.
2 weeks.
Yeah, going back to what Griffin was saying earlier about watching some of the metrics out there, particularly with your SEO and your paid search, it's really important because that speaks to why you don't want to set all that off. If you set all of that off, now you don't have any metrics that you can monitor, and you don't know, you can't see that. So even if you leave it active in a very low spot, you're going to get better data, have historical information, be able to watch the trends.
Exactly. So I mean, that's the conversation with a lot of our clients right now. People that wanted to pull some lights on and possibly shutting off was okay, but we still want to be able to compare and contrast what the OTAs are doing on certain bids that we have in there. Let's keep it at the bare minimum. It can be a few dollars a day, but let's keep that data alive so we can keep you on top of things and tracking that volatility.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, did you all see or hear about Expedia's strategy on this? How they're watching the demand of search terms, and they're actually going to wait 5 to 7 weeks after those start to show up before deploying spend again.
I know they were monitoring. I saw that they were talking about that. I didn't know they were going to pause, though.
They're waiting 5 to 7 weeks is what I was told on another call. once they see activity hitting a certain point in an area, they will wait 5 to 7 weeks before really deploying their spend into that area again. And I thought that was interesting because I know there are going to be people out there that are going to be watching Expedia's behavior before lighting up their behavior, which potentially now is problematic if Expedia is going to pause 5 to 7 weeks. And part of the conversation I had with the person that was telling me about this was part of the reason is they don't want to have to rebuild their ad messaging, but they also don't want to be insensitive.
That's the optics, right? But the reality is they don't have the money to do it.
Yeah.
To me, I think they were financially struggling before this. They were already planning on laying off 3,000 people. I mean, they were in dire straits because of the way Google has made changes. This is great. This is the best thing that could happen, especially for independent hotels, because Expedia doesn't generate any demand for a specific destination. So
Right.
all they're
They just
doing
steal
by
it.
not being is they're filling in, or they're driving up the cost of advertising. So don't wait the 7 weeks that Expedia is. This is your opportunity to go in there and grab cheap advertising. So that's great.
Ben threw in a question into the chat. How about looking at the memberships of audiences across advertising networks? For example, how many people are members of GDN audiences with intent to travel to New York City or like an Admiral equivalent?
Is anyone else getting wicked feedback? It sounds echoey. Unless Ed talks. Is it Ed?
Is it me?
I don't know.
Because you don't echo, but everyone else is echoing.
Because I'm amazing. I'm amazing.
We only want to hear you once, that everyone else has two.
Yeah, it almost seems like somebody has maybe their speakers on and it's picking up the audio twice.
I'll turn mine way down to make sure it's not me.
Does it stop? Oh, it was Lauren.
Oh,
No,
nope, still there.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Huh.
Ed, it's you. I swear.
It could be me, but I'm not echoing. So how could it be me?
I have myself muted.
It's But anyway, that is that point because I'm doing the same thing with monitoring tools like brand mentions and Awario and so forth for clients. I'm literally looking and monitoring keywords and search terms and comp set in market as to what people are looking for to see if there's a uptick or swing as to their interest, and then also their date interests. We're still pulling that data off of the websites where when they're looking even at the hotel, whether they're booking or not, we're still pulling the dates of interest to see how far out they're actually inquiring as to if they want to stay. No real correlations yet, and not enough volume to really say that something's showing up on the scope. But we're trying to make ear to the ground to make sure that we're not missing that opportunity, that we can catch onto it early. Because our strategy is for us is to go for the big words, the big fat words fast, and then have a threshold of cost per acquisition threshold, and then as soon as we hit that, drop down to a lower tier of the next set of big fat words, and eventually, settle back into our normal pipeline strategies. So,
I think the hard part though is so many hotels that are closed haven't determined what their reopening date is. So they've changed them 4 times.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's I don't think it's me.
And when we look at looking at the metasearch perspective that I have the data on, this is some of the data that Lauren that I was teasing earlier. It's just insane how cheap everything is right now. If you can do anything at all, it is ridiculously cheap right now. And just to give some context behind that, I've got a group that we work with, about 300 hotels. Obviously, I can't name names, but it's a fairly sizable group, global. I'm getting on Google about a 20-cent cost per click and hitting about an 88% impression share. That is insane. So this particular group, we spent about $95 a month to date, and it generated $11,000 in revenue. I mean, those numbers should never work that way, ever, but they are right now, and so it's a great opportunity.
Yeah, we're seeing the exact same thing for the folks that are open. I mean, we're getting 2,800% ROI on Google Ads for a lot of folks, and we're also seeing you can pull a lever. There's this weird phenomenon we've been experimenting with, running YouTube ads and then monitoring the volume of branded search terms. And you can definitely see that it's moving the needle if you turn it on and off. So running YouTube ads to create demand, because media consumption on YouTube is through the roof. but it's super cheap to run and get some impressions, then people are hopping over to Google and typing in the brand name, and you can capture that for pennies right now, literally a few pennies in a lot of brand terms.
Mute off my mic just to make sure it isn't me that's creating the echoes. But
I think it stopped.
Did it?
Yeah, it seems better.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Maybe Ed put himself on mute. But other than, I mean, obviously, if you can, because that's the other thing we're telling our clients is to at least keep some ad campaign running, especially brand related, just if you can trickle it on so that our first logic was that you didn't get penalized for the stop-start stuff. But now it's just literally for presence and awareness, just literally keeping your name in the market for if you're operating in the market, unlike others that might have already closed, just the awareness that you're in market still selling is strong. And then there's this whole dead bones around where people weren't even having the courtesy to change their business hours or to notify on their website they were shut off. And it's just driving people crazy that, the hotels are closed, especially in New York. There's so many closed hotels in New York, but you can't tell unless you literally walk and rattle the door because their website doesn't shut off. Their hours on their business thing isn't shut off, and the phone is still answering calls, but it's automated.
If there's a hotel that needs to know what they need to do, I created a checklist so you can go through all the different websites and fix it. Because that's frustrating me too.
Yeah. Well, and some of these hotels were well run. I mean, the sad part of it is that their ownerships pulled the plug fast and dumped people, and didn't realize what they threw out the door. The people that are left don't know what to do. They don't even know how to log into their own accounts on some of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, I told you this fun story about I had a previous client that was hoping that I was still connected to their Google AdWords because their company fired the people that had access before they realized it, and they're still running AdWords and they didn't know how to even access their account to shut it off.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
certainly coming out of this, I think for at least a short while, people will be operating their business a little better. They'll be documenting things a little more. They'll be preparing for potential disruptions a little better. So there's definitely some positives coming out of this. I think we'll be stronger on the other side.
Mike, does that kill the echo, or have you noticed any difference when you guys talk?
It's come back. It's going again.
I'm going to shut it off and somebody else talk for a little bit and see if the echo's still there. Maybe it's me. I mean, I can jump in and out and see if it's me.
And now we're all silent.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. It
Go straight to silence.
It's still going on, Lauren. So it wasn't you.
All right, I'm going to mute
Okay.
myself. Tell me if it happens. I'm going to mute me, and we'll see if it's me.
Guaranteed. It's always Ed.
It's always you, Ed.
There's no echo anymore, right?
Is there an echo?
Nope. None at all. Called it.
It was Ed.
With that, he's out.
One question I want to ask.
Elementary, dear Watson. He was the only one not echoing. He had to have something to do with it. Yeah.
Griffin, where did the name Screen Pilot come from? I know it's the dumbest question in the world to ask, but
that's a great question.
Where did this come from?
Sure. So Screen Pilot, it's similar terminology to like a trailer for a movie. So basically the concept is that you have 30 seconds to capture someone's attention. When we look at websites, you have 2.5 nowadays, right? So, but starting 14 years ago, you might have had 5 seconds. So it's really just talking about how you can get as much out there about the brand to pique some interest. We're not talking, screen pilots or trailers from these days where you get the entire movie in 3.5 minutes. It's the quick kind of pique the interest.
Okay. Now,
Are there any other data points that you guys have that you want to share that were interesting to kind of share with the audience that you've compiled?
Sure. Yeah, I think personally we'll be diving a little bit more into some of the data with a list on the podcast later. I think honestly to kind of look back at what we were just talking about with Expedia dropping out right now, been interested to see, and this is in the last few weeks as we've been tracking the OTAs, I've been seeing some pretty heavy competition from Booking.com, seeing them come in pretty high in terms of share of voice. compared to the
The
other.
ones that just asked for a bailout from their country, from
Exactly. And then this morning that news comes out. So if this isn't a day by day world that we're living in right now, that's another example right there. But yeah, I think that's kind of the most pertinent today, something that we want to dive into a little bit more and keep eyes on and see what kind of share of voice might open up. I don't know what that spend is going to look like if they're putting their hands out for government assistance right now. So,
Right. Well,
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
Google, someone from Google told me recently, you know, they're getting ready to do the credits for Google ads. Someone from Google told me it was only going to be smaller businesses, that they weren't intending at this point to give those credits to the people that have spent gazillions of dollars.
No, because they want
I
that
don't know if
money. They want those businesses to go raise debt because they can.
Sure.
So Google can
Yeah.
get that money.
Yeah, they hope so. Yeah, but that was interesting because when it first came out, we thought, oh no, here we go. The Expedias and the Bookings of the world are going to drown us out again because they're going to get these massive credits. But at least one source that I've spoken to said that is not the intent. So that's another good thing.
Yeah.
well, I echo something you said earlier, Griffin. It's preparation. So you're talking about the sort of fact that small business will have the opportunity to be able to get into the market and have a voice should they choose to do so. And here we have two worst scenarios. One, most of the teams don't have team members to do this and facilitate this to begin with, so there's nobody even like that candle. And then the second of it is, even if they did, they don't even have the time and the wherewithal to know how the landscape has changed as to what they should be marketing as. So even if they tried to just flip the switch on their old campaigns, it's like trying to run a Pinto in a NASCAR race. It's not going to make it. It's going to be a whole different ball game now, and they're not going to be prepared for it. So, if anything, what you're saying, Griffin, is so true. Is like this is the time to be tearing this apart and looking at what you need to have as a strategy build for your first step. What is it you're coming out of the gate with right off the bat? What are you planning for? So,
yeah. And I'm sure we've all had these conversations with each other and with clients right now, but would love your feedback on some of it is, like I said, we're doing all we can to help people stand on some stable ground with the data. There will be a lot of subjective and anecdotal still at this point, kind of looking at markets ahead of us and seeing what's happening. Have been interested to see, I was on the ILC Instagram Live the other day with Ben Pundle from Edition, and he was talking about F&B making the strongest comeback in his Shanghai property. I've seen conflicting reports with other mainland China markets, but that's what the story was from them. And so, how can a property harness that type of traffic that's going to be coming in first and foremost, where people are feeling the most comfortable to come back to? So obviously, it's going to be the drive market, right? We're seeing TSA entry points just drop and drop and drop, but we are seeing that occupancy hasn't hit the same low that it has in a lot of other countries. And we're trying to figure out what those factors are, because obviously there's the factor of healthcare workers staying at a lot of these properties. There's people in quarantine, but are there people that are stir crazy? And is the drive market there at this point too? And how strongly is it going to start coming back, and when? Occupancy is one thing that we're looking at. We can't just look at the TSA entry because it's not going to be that flyback market. So many different things, but how are we going to harness the power of that market? Because we have as much data to go on right now as possible. There still is some subjective, but that's what we're really gearing up for. Is that's going to be the first kind of comeback, and how can we harness the power of that in as many ways possible?
Mm-hmm. This is probably a question combined between you and Stephanie a little bit, but one of the articles that Robert gave us generously was that combination article where there's going to be these very unique mergers coming out of all this. Twofold. One was that a lot of brand hotels might not come back as brand because they won't be able to actually afford to be that anymore. They might restructure themselves. And then the other aspect of it is that there might be a lot of, I got enough money to add to your money, that we can together maybe do something with the core hotels that we have. Or just, do you see some of that potential shifting for how you're planning what you're doing? Because to me, that seems like the whole competitive set that we're used to for our clients is going to change, because not a lot of them may emerge the same way or be completely different, or what do you guys think?
Some of the prior conversations we have had about, how do you treat your customers, and people are going to remember that. I think the same thing is happening with owners who have, at least from my side, that have different brands, and different brands are helping owners in different ways. And I think it's very I think that a lot of owners are going to remember this time frame in terms of which brands were able to, look at the individual hotel owners that are carrying all the majority of the weight with debt services. And I think that's going to go a long way in terms of either how they change their next hotel or who they choose to build their next hotels with.
Are you going to name names, Stephanie? Tell us who's doing it well.
Come on.
Who's not.
You can contact me offline and I'll tell you who the bad guys are and who the good guys are.
I feel like we've already kind of got an idea.
Stephanie's inbox just started filling up with
Surprise
emails.
us. Surprise us with one that's doing it well. How about that?
Yeah, there you go.
From an owner standpoint, Best Western was one of the first ones to come out of the gate and, Paul's franchise fees and whatnot. And they did it much sooner. It took some of the other bigger ships a lot longer to find ways that I feel like wouldn't hurt their purse as much. But Best Western, I think, did it quicker and faster and better than the other brands. I know one of the big ones that I was supposed to say, but I think from an owner standpoint, they've done it the best.
Yeah. So any prognostications, Griffin, as to timelines that you think about? Like when do you think you'll be able to put the strongest foot forward time schedule wise? I mean, just anything that you think is like, oh, October looks like we might have a chance to really crack at it, or September, or not until 2021. I mean, like you said, changes every day, and it's a harmless question because it's going to change tomorrow anyway. So,
completely, it's true, right? I mean, we're preparing on the most immediate bounce backs, right? And like I was saying at the beginning of the call, we don't know if it's going to be a V-shaped bounce back or if it's going to be this roller coaster we're on, more likely for quite some time. So we try to see as immediate in the future as possible. Right now, kind of looking to markets ahead of us, there should be a bounce back. And kind of the signals are pointing towards that as we look at some of these search terms, like slowly, but at the same time, we didn't have as big a drop off in occupancy as these other markets did ahead of us. So, I mean, at this point, there are so many factors. We're taking it a day at a time. We don't really have a prediction on when things are going to be going, but we want to have a loud enough voice for the industry, and easily enough, for our clients to let them know when we start seeing these signals of it's time to pounce. You got to be ready to go right then and there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think
I'd argue that time to pounce is probably now in terms of being out there. One, because your exposure is not that big, because the search volume is lower, but the cost per click is lower. So it doesn't cost a lot of money relatively to have your voice out there now. And we know that it's going to get more competitive, more expensive as things start to ramp up. So I think you got to look now. And what we're seeing, and I was on the HSMA advisory board call yesterday, and in the Myrtle Beach market specifically, we're seeing a lot of demand for September and beyond. It's kind of light before September. And I was thinking it was because they've shifted a few major events to September. They've shifted a country music festival, a car show, and a bike week to September. So that I was assuming it was just people shifting from earlier in the year. But I was hearing from folks in New York, folks in Florida, that September seems to be that mark where people's confidence is rising. So targeting folks out that far, I think, is good, because we don't know what's going to happen between now and then. But we do know that the signals are beginning to come up. So if you look at the federal guidelines that came out in the last couple of days related to recovery and what does opening up look like, they've created these 2-week gates. So if your area, whether that's a state level or a county level, shows 2 consistent weeks or 14 consistent days of a decrease, then you hit phase 1, which loosens some of the protocols, and then another 14 days you go to phase 2. What we're likely going to see is some people are going to go phase 1, 2, 3 within a 6-week period, and things are going to be relatively back to normal. But you're going to have other areas where there's going to be a ramp up of cases again, and they're going to have to go back to phase 1 or phase 0. So I think it's going to be very regional. I think it's going to be staggered from state to state and region to region. But what America has, which I think is different than other markets, and you just kind of alluded to this, Griffin. If you look at the STAR data related to China, China never it dropped out a lot lower than the U.S. I think it dropped down to a very low occupancy, and even now it's only rebounded up to about 30-40% occupancy, and they're 6 weeks ahead of us. But the U.S. is kind of sitting, and it's plateaued for a while, for a lot longer than China did, but it's sitting 10, 20 points up from where China was. So I think there's a resilience and a confidence and a FU kind of spirit that the American traveler has that the Chinese don't, that the European doesn't, that's probably likely to be in your face coronavirus. We're going to go travel regardless of what you think. So I think psychologically, America's likely to rebound a little bit more aggressively than some other markets. But
and I'll say that with the exception of very dense tourism centers. So
yeah,
anywhere
even
where,
so, man,
well, I
say
mean,
that.
like I'm thinking New York City. I'm thinking
Sure.
they're going to have a hard time coming back. I'm thinking Orlando is going to have a hard time coming back close to its normal demand.
Sure.
And
the
I
whole
think
country
that's-
will. The whole
Right.
country
Well,
will
no,
not
I
be
actually-
to normal demand in
But I
50
actually
years.
think
It won't.
perceived safe trips will
Mhm.
actually get to normal demand very quickly. So national parks, beaches,
Beaches.
mountains, anything that has that perception of separation, I think will come back to normal demand levels fairly quickly. I
When you
think
say fairly quickly, is that weeks or months?
from today.
Well, from when things start to open. So,
I'll do from
beach
today.
destination opens
I
on May
think you'll
1st.
see. I think you'll see Myrtle Beach have a strong 4th of July.
Strong being sold out like it normally is, or strong
I would
being
say strong
80%
compared to their
occupancy?
normal 4th of July.
Yeah, so I don't know.
We've got a new term in our industry, or at least it was new to me anyway. We've got a new term in our industry now called revenge travel,
Mhm.
which are
Yeah.
those people, you brought up the ones that are saying, F you, I'm going to travel. And we're starting to see it a little bit in society as it is right now, because you've got the protests that are already happening now. People that are supposed to be staying at home, and they're saying, no, that I'm done, I'm going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Travel's not far
State of
behind that.
Virginia.
We're going to start saying, you know what, that's it. I've got to go.
And if you're
we
an
talked about this last
advertiser,
week a little bit, I
find
think the
those people.
camping community will be the kind of the lead of that.
Mm-hmm.
and if you're an advertiser, you want to target and find these types of people.
Exactly.
Because also beyond these people will be the people who look at it and say, you know what, it's super cheap to travel, so I'm going to travel
It is.
now because it's
Yeah.
it's expensive later on.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take the risk and travel early. And honestly, I mean, you should be targeting like people who follow Flat Earth and stuff like that, because they're going to be the ones. No, I'm not saying it jokingly.
I know
They're
you're not.
going to be the
Really
ones
smart idea. Mhm.
who are going to do revenge travel.
I
They're
And
I
you know,
just
I
hate
think
that
like
term for the record. We need a better term for it than that. I hate that
I
revenge
I
travel
agree
term.
with that.
It is a bad
Um,
term, I agree.
I
A good
both
friend
kind
of mine,
of agree. Sorry, Dean.
Go ahead, Lily.
I was just going to say I both agree and disagree with kind of Ed's point about how quickly things are going to come back. I don't know that an area like Myrtle Beach, which is known for becoming crowded, in my opinion, that probably won't have the same kind of 4th of July that it would have in a prior year. But I do agree that things that are a little bit more off the beaten path will have their heyday. And that is, I think, the biggest shift we're going to see in travel is people getting away from the city hotels, which is interesting because that's where the majority of them are. But we've had properties that are kind of in the middle of nowhere, not quite. They're somewhat convenient to other areas, but like you said, in the mountains or beach, but not popular beach areas. Our popular beach areas like Tulum, not seeing very much demand at all right now because they know that those areas are typically crowded with other travelers. So people are going to start to look for those out of the way places that are not crowded in order to make their travel plans because it feels safer. In fact, some of ours, like up in Estes Park in Colorado, had the government not shut them down, they would be doing fine today because they were continuing to enjoy a similar level of demand. They were actually growing year over year as recently as mid-March after all of this came out. So I think that that's one of the main things that's going to happen. And number two, I know we talked a little bit about this last week, to Dean's point, not just glamping, but RV travel.
Yeah.
It's huge. If there are investors out there, I know I've been contacted by some who are, looking to invest in new hotels. If I had money to invest right now, I'd probably go buy some really nice RV parks and actually run them with the hospitality knowledge that we all have. Because the biggest gap there is going to be that a lot of RV park operators are kind of mom and pop establishments.
And it's interesting because timing wise, I don't know if you all know, but Margaritaville has their first RV park fully open, which is a very high-end RV park, which makes sense. I don't know why RV parks didn't catch on. That the fact that someone owns a $500,000 RV potentially tells you, spending-wise, what you could do to make your park cater to that audience versus the person who's running the 1970 Winnebago.
Right.
Because right now most RV parks, the way they price themselves, they're attracting both. But I guarantee you, if you had amenities and features that priced you up, you'd be serving more of the $100,000 to $500,000 RV owner, which would also they would consume more ancillary spend as well. So you could actually have other services in your RV park. So I agree with you that from a hospitality perspective, there is some opportunity there.
I got a few $100 if people want to get this going. I like where this is going.
I mean, I'll put in the sweat equity.
Combination of adventures to revengers. New time for new
Adventures, yes, I like that.
Yeah.
I think my personal opinion is it's the revenge portion that I don't really like. It just spins it very negatively.
Yeah,
more like
that's spoken like the person who spends a lot of time figuring out how to maximize how much they can charge a traveler, and you don't want to be seen as a revenge revenue manager.
Actually, it's less about the optics and more about the fact that I'm an optimistic and positive.
But as always,
So from that optimistic perspective, a good friend of mine is early February when this was called, kind of all on the early onset of it, and he went out to the Garden of the Gods Resort in Colorado Springs and had the place to himself.
Oh, wow.
So imagine that kind of an experience where you can go someplace like that and just own it.
Yep.
I mean, wow.
That property is so beautiful.
I love that Colorado's coming up a lot right now. I've seen it, both subjectively, but also from the data that Google, when Google was sending out to the government, how they were tracking users, people were flooding to locations like that in Colorado. Everybody wanted to get away from each other, and ironically, we're all ending up in the same place.
Same with Washington.
One of the challenges I think that is going to occur in early release of certain areas is I have a feeling that everyone in New York and New Jersey are dying to get out of New York and New Jersey, which is actually problematic because that potentially is going to cause hotspots to flare up.
It's going to be kind of fun. Maybe some of the old haunts will come back, like the Catskills and things like that were the proximity location destinations for people out of the city, back in the day that have long since been overpassed. Or, they're still busy.
I don't know if I'd say they're overpassed. I work with quite a few hotels in that area
they're still
that
busy.
sell out 2 years in advance on peak season. So I would say there's still.
I used to go up there as a formal waiter. I used to follow the season up there. But that heyday is different than the days they are now. It was way busy. I'm pulling my age out saying it was way busier than it is now.
Really?
When all the first cases in Florida, the coronavirus cases in Florida were all the original defined cases were mostly people from New York and New Jersey that were trying to escape.
Yep.
and
Right.
decided to come down to Florida.
Well,
Yeah.
it's even,
Yeah.
the Hamptons kind of struggled right at the beginning of all this because people who, they go to the Hamptons during the summer, they live in the city part of the time, whatever, they were all flooding to the Hamptons, even in their, personal homes that they would own out there. And the Hamptons was simply not set up with the infrastructure to handle that. So I think that, regardless of the hospitality element of it, we're going to probably see a little bit more of that. And I think we're also going to see a broadening of the gap between the wealthy and the not so wealthy, because those who had the cash reserves, excuse me, to withstand all of this are probably going to look for even more exclusive destinations and be like, I don't want to be too close to the general public. I need to have this resort all to myself. We saw an article about that, I think, last week. But then there are going to be those who are completely tapped out, and as much as they would like to, can't travel at all right now because they simply don't have the money. So I think that's going to be really telling to see what happens with that. But I really think that we're going to see a complete divergence. And from a data perspective, I'm hoping to see more data sets that are broken down by income level, because I think that we're going to see such a dramatic difference in behavior that if we try to put everybody into one survey, those who have money and who have not, we're going to get a bunch of muddled data that's really of no use to anybody. So I think it'll be interesting to see if we can come out with some good data sets about those who have the money to travel and those who don't, and how they diverge.
I agree with you on a lot of those points, but some of the things that are actually going to be interesting to look at here is there's going to be some lumpiness in how income works. And where I say lumpiness is you're going to have a lot of them. Unfortunately, it's the ones who always get beaten the worst. Is middle class is going to get beaten up worse here, but you're also going to see some lower income temporarily pushed to a slightly higher income because of the benefits packages put out. Especially when you look at like states like Florida, which have a despicable unemployment rate. State of Florida unemployment is almost impossible to get. First of all, and it's always been that way. It's by design, but it's only $200 a week normally, and so with the $600 a week thrown on top of that, that's actually going to make a difference for an entire part of the Florida economy. That is the living, poor. I mean, it's a huge issue, especially because of the hospitality industry. The underemployed part of Florida is getting a bit of a shot in the arm, which is interesting to think about. And that's a high volume of people who are going to have incrementally more money in pocket for a period of time than they normally have. And it'll be interesting to see what that does to their behavior. Because I think you will see some, and it actually is fairly common in that level of income, that when new cash comes, they don't normally save it. They look at it as, I'm not going to have this again. This is my one chance to have this. I'm going to do something with it. And they will end up spending it some way or another. I wonder how much of that will go to travel.
Mm-hmm.
That was
Yeah,
very
I think
carefully worded.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Give you credit for
Dancing through the landmines.
Thank you.
But you're touching on something really interesting, right? Which is the playbook for your advertising strategy needs to be thrown out the window, because we're going to see shifts, both people coming down, the people with a higher income level looking to save money. We're going to see people like you're talking about that are going to fly up a little bit. So your demographics are going to be different this year than they've ever been before. So who you're targeting and why you're targeting, but from an income level, from a geography level, are going to be very different. You're going to see more people likely to travel closer. They're not going to go and travel 20 miles or 20 hours necessarily. They're certainly not going to fly. They're going to start by going on short weekend trips nearby. But then on the flip side of that, there are going to be people that you typically would have flown somewhere to a different city destination that may now be willing to drive longer to get to somewhere they perceive as safer. So you've really got to keep an eye on your data and your demographics and see what shifts are happening, so you can capitalize on that with your advertising.
And I gotta say, like, you know, it sounds tongue in cheek and it almost sounds evil, but the COVID deniers understand they're going to be opportunistic in how they plan their travel. Targeting them is worthwhile. Targeting the people, because listen, I'm on endless amounts of sites of people talking about behavior and everything. And up until the cruise lines were completely shut down, there were COVID deniers in droves buying cruises for the following week because of how cheap they were, which
they're up 2021 are already up. They're already up year over year for cruises right now.
So you know, you have to think differently, and you have to think about how you find the different mindsets, because the people who are Lauren are not going to travel for a while. Like the people who went to a point where they completely, followed to the T social distancing, they're disinfecting packages before they come in. Those people are not going to travel, and those people are going to be across all types of income brackets and, like everywhere. So you have to find the people who were a little bit looser with it, who, went to the grocery store 3 times a week still. Because it was their way of getting out and they didn't see it as dangerous. You need to find these different mentalities that previously we didn't have as a segment.
I'm sure there's certain political pages you can follow to pick up on some of those people.
a lot of keywords we can use.
Yeah. What's the?
You also need to be careful, right?
You want to target the Texas politician, the senator. What's his name? Ted Cruz. You just want to target his voters.
You do want to be careful, though, I think. And I think, Stuart kind of started with that. And the thought I have is with a lot of these remote places, there is an issue there. And the original issue that we had in the first place, and why these places were shut down, is the access to healthcare when you're at these places.
Yep.
So we don't know what the resurgence is going to look like. Right now, we have the conversation leading towards, things aren't as bad as we thought they would be, without giving credit for the shelter in place that's happening at this point. What could happen there? That could be a horrible, if we're talking marketing, that could be a horrible name for a brand if they have people flooding back in droves and they become some hotspot for COVID.
That's the real risk, right? Is you become stigmatized beyond the natural length of this, because you are ground zero for the resurgence in your market. So I think one of the things we're thinking about a lot with our clients and at a DMO level here in Myrtle Beach is, how do we mitigate that risk? Because the people you're talking about attracting, by nature, they're going to be more cavalier. If they're already denying it, or they're already a little more risk tolerant, they're going to be the ones that are probably not going to follow protocols. So you've got to make sure you have protocols in place that are preventing them and their behavior from spreading it to your staff, from spreading it to other guests. So being really mindful about what your new policies are and enforcing those is going to be really critical to avoid a catastrophe.
Well, and what do you do too? I mean, do you think about, just not dropping marketing into areas that were hit really hard? Like, do you avoid New York in your marketing audience?
I certainly wouldn't be targeting New York right now. I would not. I think that's a risk.
Good point. There's also, and I don't know whether it's going to be I think it's probably going to be a later thing than an earlier thing, but aspirational travel might be the scare that this created, might make people realize whether, that they should take that trip that they never took. Not maybe right off the bat, like people like me, I just pointed out, because I shared with Ed the fact that I went to the grocery store for the first time in a month and a half and wore a hazmat suit, but that's just me.
And you've been taking
you
your
were already
every
wearing
hour
a face mask before it was cool during travel.
Well,
So.
I wanted to borrow the Darth Vader helmet from Stuart, but he wouldn't ship it. So,
but then at the same time that he was doing all this, he was also hugging everyone at the Navis event.
Lauren is just one big oxymoron.
At least put the oxy in front of it. Thank you for putting
I could have shortened that sentence.
But yeah, I think that some people might be, when they finally realize and get through all this, and there's some sort of level of normalcy that clicks in their head, they might make that long aspirational trip. They might take that effort to go over and say, hey, I'm going to go do that because if anything was learned from this, is that it can happen. And so go off and
Yeah,
learn.
Griffin, where are you gonna go?
Anybody lose his family or anything like that.
Where
I mean,
am
Griffin got it, so I mean, you need to
I
travel.
gotta bring it back. I was actually gonna say, speaking of morons, I am. It's a great ending note. No, but I'm 9 minutes late to the meeting that I was supposed to be in.
Whoops.
Speaking of morons, internal
About
meeting,
that.
okay. I hope they're not watching. But I'm gonna get going. This has honestly been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed chatting with y'all. I'd love to hop in next week if you are
Always welcome. You know that.
Always
welcome.
hop back in. This has been awesome. Talk to y'all later.
Yeah,
Talk
Griffin.
to you later.
Before they go, where they can find you? Where can they find you? Website, email, what?
Screenpilot.com. Right on the homepage, you can be linked out to our COVID-19 resource center. All split out from inspiration to data to whatever you're looking for that day, so you're not kind of inundated with all the information. Whatever track you're trying to go down, we'll have it for you there.
I'll put the link on the show notes for everybody so they can go see your information data and stuff like that. I have the link up, so I'll put that in there too.
Okay, in the main website right there on the drop off. But
Yep.
all right, talk to
All
you
right,
later.
Griffin, thanks
Have
for
a great
joining us.
Yeah, later, Griffin. And you can also find him on the Fuel Hotel Marketing Podcast.
Yeah, he's going to move. He's going to step on up. He's slumming with us today, but he's going to be going to the high level with you tonight, this afternoon.
That's
But
funny.
hey, you're not the only podcast in town, Mister. We got ourselves a
This is true.
revenue management podcast from a
is
super cool revenue management expert in the field person. Not naming names begins with an L, and it's not me.
That was a nice workaround to not name names. Yes, and actually, episode 2 is up where we featured the brilliant Stephanie Smith, along with Catherine Baker, who's my partner over at Think Up Enterprises. So if you're still struggling with how to close your hotel or you need help tracking down those websites, that features Stephanie's checklist and some additional thoughts on that. And episode 3 is in editing right now.
And I have to give you a compliment, Lily. Both episodes, I've listened to them in their entirety, unlike Stewart's, which I kind of listen to even when I'm on it.
Especially when he's on it.
Especially when I'm on. I don't even bother listening if I'm on it.
Yeah.
But no, real solid content. Really, really good stuff.
Thank you.
I'm actually going to try to push it around. Like I promised you, it's not my podcast, but it's such a great podcast. I want people to make sure that they know it's out there because you're still getting indexed on some stuff. I don't think you're still on iTunes yet. It takes forever to get iTunes to freaking lock in on that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But
Well, I'm sure like everybody is launching a podcast right now too, because nothing better to do.
right.
But yeah, it's really interesting. I have my guest for episode 3 is actually Aaron Green from Verify Services, who is not a hospitality specific company, but works with utility providers and whatnot to negotiate bills. And so really kind of getting into some of the nitty gritty on tips to negotiate down your expenses in the middle of this. And there's a couple other guests I have lined up as well that are a little bit outside of the hospitality industry, but definitely will impact great tips for people coming up. So I'm excited to add some diversity to that too.
Nice.
Sorry.
Drop the link in the chat because I can't find it right now.
Sure. I certainly will.
And Mr. Stewart, you have a survey running, don't you?
Yeah, we actually just sent out a second. Well, we've actually got 2 surveys running. So we did the consumer sentiment study 2 weeks ago, and just try to gauge where people's mind was related to travel. We actually refielded that again to the same audience yesterday, and I've got preliminary results, which are really interesting. So they'll be published on our website probably on Monday or Tuesday. But we're also running another survey, which is aimed at hoteliers, which is we're trying to understand the decisions they've made and the decisions they're going to make related to operations and marketing. So we're doing that in conjunction with a couple of other vendors as well. So Review Pro and Stay in Touch we've partnered with to do that one. So that survey's out now, and we're collecting data as we speak.
You guys are getting some good sample sizes too. What was the sample size of the last survey you did?
Yeah, it was over 10,000, like 10,500 for the first one we did. This one we just literally sent yesterday at 3:40 to the same database of consumers that have indicated they're leisure travelers in the last year. I looked at it about an hour ago, and we were already up to close to 9,000. So
Wow.
yeah, and so there's a real hunger right now for people to contribute and help and give opinions. They're sitting at home, they're bored, and they feel very strongly. They have strong emotions about both travel and about COVID. So we've been telling every single one of our clients, and I would encourage everyone here to listening to create a survey, send it to your guest history database, and understand what people are feeling and when they're planning on doing things. And fill that study multiple times to your database, because one, you're getting tremendous engagement and staying top of mind, but two, the insights you can get from that will help shape your marketing over the next few months. Because if you know this segment of people, say they're going to be more willing to travel when restrictions are lifted than this other segment, well, now you can target them with more aggressive emails. But you can also use that for remarketing lists for search ads. You can also use that for custom audiences on Facebook. So you now know, out of all your guests, who are the ones that are going to be first out of the gate. It'll save you money on your advertising, but also make you a lot more effective. So every hotel in the world right now that's capable of doing this, i.e. they're not a brand and can't do it, should be. So every independent hotel should be sending out surveys right now to their guest history. It's one of the most valuable pieces of insight you're going to get.
Yeah, I
And people are actually willing to respond.
Yeah,
unbelievable rates. So I said this on the show last week. We typically have hit this database with surveys and the sentiment surveys in the past, and we incentivize it. We'll offer gift cards to folks that fill it out, and we'll do sometimes big prizes if they're drawn, one lucky winner kind of thing. And we typically get maybe 2,000 or 3,000 responses, and we're doing zero incentives on this one. And both times we've sent it within 24 hours. We're probably going to hit 10,000 on this one. So within 24 hours, both times we've hit over 10,000 responses. So people are ignited right now. They're ready. They're charged, and they want to give you feedback. And it's valuable information.
To share that sentiment, I'm trying to do my small part in helping share your survey stuff. I was on. I tried to join as many of these coffee talks, happy hours, cocktail hours. I'm a huge fan of and HSMAI. Some of the strong chapters have taken upon themselves. I mean, Arizona does one. Ed, you've been on that one persistently. I've been on the BC one a lot up for Vancouver, and I've been sharing your surveys to everyone that I'm jumping on with, and saying, hey, this is a chance. But there's a it's kind of interesting because there's two types of people that are unemployed right now: those that resent what the company did, and those that appreciate what the company's doing for them while they still can't work. Both of them are willing to give an opinion, and you can imagine that there's a definite difference in opinion as to how they see the state of industry or see the state of business or what have you. And it's been, you get a mix of those people on, and then you get a couple of pepperings of people that are still working, and the conversations are very, like the biggest argument, the biggest frustration most of them have is when they left, they don't have a laptop with their contacts. So they don't have their phone with the They literally are out high and dry. They're literally trying to reconnect with the industry they were ingrained with because they were walked away. And it's frustrating as heck for them to try to step back into that dialogue. So when you put these surveys out and stuff like this, it's like a breath of fresh air for them of, I get to talk about this stuff or get to join this kind of stuff. And so that's probably a little bit of a help as to why you're getting such great responses that people really they love the industry, they wanted to participate with this, but they certainly have an opinion.
Everyone's got an opinion right now.
Yeah. But I know Robert gave us a lot of articles that were all about the COVID numbers and the percentages. Unless you really want to hit on this is another bad week of pain, suffering, and despair. There was some other articles that were more interesting about that. I love that merger article, the revenue management article. I wasn't too keen on. I don't know if you saw that, Lily. The one that it seemed a little too self-serving, like you still need us, and if nobody's running your rates, then you're going to get screwed.
I will say that it was mostly done by a bunch of revenue management professionals. So I think that there's balance to be had here. None of us really knows exactly what's going to come out of it, but it is important that you are still keeping an eye on your rates. right now, I'd say that's the primary thing is analytics. If you have the bandwidth to have your person actually doing the right analytics, there's no excuse to come out of this without knowing your exact profitability by channel and what your optimal mix would be, because that data, those margins and things like that likely won't shift substantially. But if they do, and you have the data ready to go, you're going to be able to see the financial impact of that, because everybody's like, well, we don't need revenue managers because everything's just going to be open. Well, great. And what's the most profitable? Because you have to spend your marketing dollars somewhere. You can't just be throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. You need to know exactly. And so revenue and marketing in this case, even more so working hand in hand with revenue providing the analytics that marketing needs in order to justify the correct spend. I think that's going to become very critical. So I do think the revenue manager's job is maybe a little bit lighter than usual, just because there's less transactions happening for us to monitor. There's less rate changes happening, less events happening. All of those demand categories and things like that we work with are lower. But that's why normally we are not a kind of limited service provider, but even from our end, we're not trying to sell full service revenue management packages right now. We're actually just about to put out a new one where if people just need a little bit of overview, we just send them kind of a weekly update so that they see everything that's happening and make sure that their rates are lined up once a week and have a quick conversation so that it's something approachable and affordable. But I do think that there's probably both sides. The article wasn't wrong, but I do agree that it may have been a little bit on the biased side.
So what I heard there was that revenue managers and marketers are essential, but screw the salespeople. We don't need those.
No, not at all.
I'm kidding.
That was foregone conclusion.
I'm
no,
kidding.
actually, if I had to choose, right, if there's a limited budget and I had to spend it somewhere, as a revenue management professional, I would spend it on sales and marketing first.
Yeah, I'd spend on sales first, to be honest with you. Honest to goodness, and that's coming from me as a marketer. I would say if you have money to put into something, get your sales team back and create the personal engagement.
Groups are booking, especially for the fall, and the great thing is because, well, I guess that's the wrong way to say it, but the advantage you have is so many sales teams have been furloughed that the competition is much less right now.
Yep.
So a lot of anecdotal conversations I've had about the teams that are still at full tilt are just doing record numbers in terms of bookings, and the fall is looking like it's going to be way stronger than ever before because so much has shifted.
Oh, you're trying to put square
I think
pegs
that
in
depends on the market.
What's that? Say that sentence.
Well, it depends on the market and the strategy, and it's property by property, right? If you're being proactive about it, you can be really successful. Just like with marketing right now, if you're proactive with marketing, you can sit at a decent occupancy. If you follow, especially like Lauren's tactics that he's employed with a lot of his clients, you can sit at a healthy occupancy by going scrappily at onesie twosie kind of types of opportunities. You got to do the same with sales right now.
Yeah. No, question, and because there was a polarity of conversation at one of these happy hours that I was joined in with. There was a guy from Booking.com, a guy from Expedia, and the question came up about pre-purchase rates. Mm-hmm. And I made the comment that we threw them out the window for anybody that has still plans that are running. I've thrown all pre-booking, pre-purchase non-refundables. Let's put it that way. That we don't have non-refundable rates anymore for now. It's not that I'm against them. It's just right now there's not a sellability to them. So we're not talking about them at all. And that we're offering anybody for cancellation a 30% advance discount, regardless of when they, just let us move it down the road. We'll give you 30% off. And boy, did that get their little hairs up in the back of the because they're like, no, we're Booking.com is absolutely not. Expedia was a little bit softer about their answer, but Booking.com was like, absolutely not. That's bread and butter. We're not doing that. We still hold true to this, and it kind of lends itself to one of the articles that Robert put in there about with bed hotels. What is it? Where they're keeping they're still doing that advance for wholesalers. That it's still a hey, you pay ahead, and if you have to cancel, it's going to be penalized. Stephanie, I mean, it's fun to have you back on the show with us. What do you and Lily think about? Do you think brands are going to have to hang on to that? Or do you think they're going to have to toss that out the window for a while? I mean.
I think they need to be. I think they need to be flexible. But I have some independent hotels that are, that are big on their whole deposit, and they're pushing it just as hard now, just because for cash flow reasons. And I assume that's probably why the OTAs are doing it too. Because even if people aren't comfortable traveling until September, if they can get them to book this summer and at least get some cash flow going between now and then, I mean, it's probably just for that reason. I would assume.
Mm.
The brands have been like I said, almost from my standpoint, so many people were furloughed. Like I can't even I tried to just make some basic content updates on a Hilton site this week, and they just they just deleted my ticket and said, we're not doing that right now. It has to be an emergency case. So I have a couple of proactive clients who are like, okay, let's at least try to get into, spend time on things that we just haven't had time to do over the last however many months. And I can't even do that.
Mm-hmm.
But
hey,
I'll talk it,
Stuart, by the way, I have a brilliant idea that will save the universe. You just need to
I'll
build
be the
it.
judge of that. Okay.
Make a freaking gift certificate program from a hotel that's affordable, please.
There's
Yeah.
a couple.
Huh?
There's a couple.
What?
No, there's
Yeah,
not.
there's some out there.
Nope. No, there's not. Nope.
Okay. How much you want to bet?
Okay, go find me one that doesn't cost me at least 3 to 5% on fees associated with what they sell, plus a flat monthly fee, plus merchant transaction costs on top of that. Yeah, go ahead.
Challenge accepted.
You want to look at voucher card? You want to look at iLookAtMe? Trust me, I have 14 different platforms I've gone through, and all of them have stupid amounts of fees. And if you find one, I'll just shoot myself, but I'll be happy. Nothing like giving Ed a challenge because he knows you're going to
see
find
that look of determination. He's going to have it for you in about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Lily, do you have any insight? Do you think the brands are going to change how they do their advanced purchase rates and non-refundables?
Well, historically, I don't see the brands doing much to change at all. They really like to do things the way that they do them, in my opinion. And so if they do, they'll probably do it kicking and screaming a little bit, because it wasn't that long ago that they just increased to like 48 or 72 hour cancellation periods, depending on the type of hotel and which brand, from the normal 24 hours. So I feel like they've been going in the more restrictive direction than anything else. I think that if they're smart, though, with their consumer sentiments, that they will maybe add that. I've long thought that part of a loyalty program, maybe make the loyalty program a little bit more restrictive, but have flexible cancellation terms as part of the loyalty program. Maybe not for every guest, because that, honestly, like of the brands that I'm loyal to, meaning mostly Southwest and Amazon, a big portion of that is because I can change my plans at any time, which I do frequently, or used to. Now all my plans are about staying home. But Southwest and Amazon allow me to change without having any sort of fees. I can do it at the last minute. So I think that those are the types of things that really make people genuinely loyal to a brand, as opposed to the fact that right now I can almost guarantee you that most people also have a card for Hilton and Marriott and IHG all in their wallet, and they just stay wherever it suits them. Although if they have a few more points, they might make a decision between the two, in a majority of cases. Business travel is probably a notable exception, but who knows if business travel will come back. I just saw an article saying like 74% of companies intend to continue work from home environments after things rebound. So that could be a huge threat to business travel for the hotel industry in general.
Okay, so vouchers, yes. Just to jump off both of these. I've looked at both of these. Can you tell me whether I can readjust the value of the voucher if it wasn't fully redeemed? Because that's my problem.
Oh, I don't know, but call them and
That's
ask.
why, yeah, I can buy vouchers all day long. I can do coupons all day long. I can do single value product and say I buy $125, but if I don't use the whole $125 or $500, can you readjust my voucher value so that I can come back and finish it off? That's the element problem I have. See that I can buy vouchers. I mean, I can do that Groupon. I can go over and say 2 night stay, whatever, and do a set value thing or coupon. I can do a coupon thing all day and say this is the value you just bought. That, but I'm talking about if I buy $1,000 gift card and I come in, I only use $750. Can you give me $250 value back on the same card?
I don't know. You just asked me to find you something cheap.
That's vouchers. Those are gift certificates.
I mean, there are ways to do that by just
And then
issuing a
I'm
new
looking at yours
coupon,
too. I
right,
had
with
seen
that with the balance. I would go that route versus getting into physical gift cards and things like that.
No, it's
Yeah.
not physical gift cards. It's not physical. I don't want plastic cards or nothing like that. I
No, but
want
you want what you want is sophisticated, but you don't want to pay for the sophistication. Like
Yeah.
you want a payment gateway basically that can handle this stuff, and that costs money, Lauren. So you said you wanted cheap that could do what you wanted to do. That's vouchers, my friend.
Okay, I have a cheaper version, but the people haven't updated their website since 2006. It still has the little Apple Shadow buttons that. Have
Yeah, I know.
little-
I gave you one that would also work and was
Yeah.
cheap. So
Yeah, the idea of it was that if I bought a gift certificate, not to send them a card or anything, but give them a locked redemption capability, whether it be a QR, barcode, whatever, or even snail mail stuff, they come in, and then if they didn't use the full value, I would be giving them the balance value back onto whatever that vehicle was.
why don't you just give them a different voucher for whatever's
Yeah,
left?
just give them a
Well,
new.
that's
new
the
voucher.
old-fashioned way of doing it. You're absolutely right. That is my baseline.
So
Okay.
So,
Well, just
so
say
if I get you
30%.
correctly, and excuse me for like really digging into this. So there's a way you can do it with the cheaper platform, but you don't want to have to do it that way. You want the better platform, but you don't want to pay for the better functionality.
No. The platforms that are out there.
I just want to ask this because honestly,
No.
this is
That's
why
not what I
I
asked.
sold.
That's not what I asked for.
Easy
What I asked for
was
was an
because that
affordable
was
means
what
of
happened to
doing
channel
it.
management.
No. What I asked for was an affordable means of doing it because these gift cards and vouchers are based on a percentage of sale. And when
Yes,
people
because
buy big,
that's a
fat gift cards-
sophisticated
Yes, the
architecture
answer is yes.
to manage it.
The answer is yes. There is
Yes.
a cheaper way to do it, Lauren, but it comes at a price.
And the price is you have to do it manually.
And that's what I've been doing, really,
Okay.
honestly. It has
So-
been on a platform called PrestoMart where we were able to facilitate the.
So-
Problem
So
solved.
done.
Nope, but
You
the
have a
PrestoMart
solution.
platform is a bad platform because it looks
So
like.
then
it
look
came
at
from
one of
2006.
those. They do the same thing.
So the only problem we have now is that Lauren's still whining, but the actual
Yeah, that's about
issue
it.
is
That's all I
solved.
got, you
Okay,
know?
we're good.
Yep.
You
Move
didn't
on.
give me an answer, but I'm still whining.
I gave you
We
an
did
answer.
give you the answer. We gave you the
I'm
exact
gonna look
answer.
at
to the
Ben's
question.
stuff because hi, Cat. I'm gonna look at Ben's stuff because Ben's nicer than both of you, so I'm just gonna go look at Ben's stuff now. Ed's in a feisty mood today. He just
I am. Well, you know what it is honestly, it's why I got out of the channel management business. Was that attitude of I want, like everyone wanted what EasyYield did, but didn't want to pay the premium for it, while not understanding that the reason it was so much better than the other platforms was because most of that premium went to R&D.
See, but again, these vouchers aren't solving my problem, so it's not the solution. I don't mind paying
Your
for some-
problem requires a better architecture, which costs more money.
Nobody has this solution.
What
You said they do.
eGiftify?
They just cost you 3%, and that was your problem.
Right.
Even the voucher one,
about
even the voucher
eGiftify?
card and so forth is doing what these are doing, which
Oh,
is I
Lord.
have to buy a set amount and that's
Have
it.
you looked at
I can't-
eGiftify?
Huh?
eGiftify.
eGiftify. Let me look at that one. I don't think I
It's
looked
what
at that one.
Benchmark uses for their gift card program across all their properties.
I
But I
just
mean,
wanted to
You're getting
remind
into
you guys
banking
that
transactions.
we have an audience. Just an FYI.
Hey, they
This
said
is
they
not
you
a
disagree. So we're repeating the audience. But anyways, all right, back to Article Land. Pick something.
I'm
that you
gonna jump off. I have a call, so happy Friday.
Happy
Thanks,
Friday.
Friday. Thanks for jumping in.
Have you guys talked about? I know I didn't come on right away. Have you guys talked about Marriott's debt raise that they did?
Mm-mm.
I mean, it's super interesting what happened there.
Hey, can you briefly explain it, just in case someone hypothetically hadn't read the notes for the show?
Oh, actually, I wasn't going off of that. I was actually going off of a conversation I had with a banker friend of mine who talked to me about how that debt raise went down, which was super interesting. So Marriott went to put out a bond raise for $600 million in debt. And they were doing it as a downgraded entity. So they actually got downgraded below investment grade, which means the bond yield they had to offer was bigger than they would have had they raised the money like last fall. So because of that, because of this 5% spread that got added to this bond yield, the demand for the bond went through the roof because everyone's looking at Marriott as, okay, they've been temporarily downgraded because of the situation of their industry. So yeah, I'll take a 5%, coupon on Marriott all day. So they ended up oversubscribing it by $1 billion. They ended up raising 1.6 billion.
It's kind of connected to the rut row portion of it a little bit. There was the article about Marriott's financial decision outlooks, depending upon current trend.
When you don't have assets, the bond market is all you've got. I mean, that's the problem that Marriott had. And that's the problem with any of the brands that went asset light is when you get into a situation like this, you don't have the ability to raise traditional financing because you don't have assets to leverage.
No,
It used to be that Marriott would have just gone and leveraged the World Center and, their other big assets and just take a mortgage on them. But the bottom line is the fact that they don't own any assets. They had to go to the bond market. Not that listen, if you saw what they're paying for interest on this, you'd be happy to take that interest rate all day, any day, because it's still a really good interest rate. However, it's not the interest rate they would have gotten last year. And it's definitely not the interest rate they would have gotten had they been leveraging against one of their real estate assets that they used to have.
Well, they're in the same world of Expedia and everybody else. No, they have no assets to put this against. It's all based on their.
So they had to do bonds, and so 1.6 billion in bonds, is that's a really substantial raise.
What's the return on the bonds for those?
5%. Which, I mean, listen, if you have $100 million, it's really hard to safely make 5%. That would be considered a very safe vehicle. And the bond market's going to get really aggressive because you're going to see all these local municipalities have to put out bonds to cover losses in revenue and things like that. So which is actually, it's probably why Marriott did theirs so quickly. Because once the muni bonds come on the market and need to do aggressive rates, muni bonds are usually, at least their high credit rating ones, are insured, meaning your principal is guaranteed. Even if they default, you get your principal back. So the muni bond market's going to be crazy for the next probably 5-6 years as all these local municipalities struggle to dig out of the hole that this issue is creating for them.
Is it just me, but I've noticed that more and more persistently in most of the articles that are being generated, that there's this percentage calculation of business failure getting put on top of this stack of conversation more and more. I don't mean to be gloom and doom about it, but it seems like most of the persistent articles that are being pushed out nowadays, there seems to be this calculation of business failure percentages in the what's going to be having to be calculated towards when you come in back into market as to who you're not competing with anymore or who you might not even be able to.
Well, I think for hotels, it's an unrealistic thing to care about because banks don't shut down hotels; they keep them operating. They learned if you shutter a hotel completely, the asset depreciates greatly. As time continues. So, I mean, I don't think a hotelier can look forward to coming in and no longer having the hotel across the street competing with them because the bank that takes it over is going to hire a management company to manage it while they're trying to sell the asset.
So do you think the management companies are going to have a bit of a boom when it comes to this, that there's going to be a lot of pickup?
There's going to be some massive consolidation. And a lot of people that are in a financially strong position are going to pick up a lot of stress.
Well, and I mean, there were a lot of like really good hoteliers. I know at least 6 really good hoteliers that had actually been building up a war chest to expand their current assets. I would not be surprised at all to see those war chests completely diverted to buying other, net new property for themselves. I know here in town in Orlando, Harris Rosen had built up a pretty substantial war chest. He was going to build 2 new towers on 2 of his existing properties, and it's somewhere between $100 and $200 million war chest. Like, he's not going to build a tower now. He's going to go buy some properties on someone who ends up losing their property to the bank.
Mm.
You know,
or is in danger of doing that and willing to cut their losses and give him a
Right.
deal right now. before
right,
they have
Right.
to walk away with potentially some of their equity.
Yep.
Mhm.
So yeah, but I think it's unrealistic to think that the hotel's not going to be open. All the hotels will be
Yeah, agreed.
open.
Yeah.
They're all going to be there.
Agreed.
Yeah,
What did you think about Airbnb's article about raising another $1 billion?
they need to.
But I'm not saying by saying that, but just it's amazing to think that they were able to pull that in at a time when
Yeah.
they're probably not looked at as favorably as being a good investment. Is what I was
Yeah,
thinking.
I'd like to understand who those investors are because I don't think that's a sure bet at this point.
Yeah, but what
I
is
mean, I
right
think-
now? I mean, what is a sure bet? Do you think the medical industry is? Because they're getting killed because basically everything except for COVID went away.
Sure.
You know, when you look at most, Amazon is probably a fantastic, idea, except everyone has that idea. So their value hasn't been depressed as much.
Right.
So where else are you going to go? Like, the-
Marriott Bonds.
Ugh. I mean, but it is the challenge, and with interest rates being
Yeah.
so low, they can't just park their money. To large investment houses, sitting on money and not having it making money is actually causing the money to lose money. Like if you park your money at the Fed right now, like the 10-year value on that, you end up paying the Fed for holding your money versus the
Yeah.
other way around. So I mean, there are a lot of players, and don't forget, like the people who are putting out this kind of money, the people who are participating in this kind of buy, they're not looking at 2-year projections. They're
No, for
looking at 10-year, 15-year, 25-year projections. They're perfectly fine if the money shrinks before it grows.
Yeah. But do you feel like Airbnb is going to come out of this healthy or not? I mean, even not just the next 2 years, but the next 10 years. I mean, I think this, if you look at the fact that they've stopped all advertising, I think there's this kind of debate going on. You hear one camp saying vacation homes and individual apartments and things like that are going to come out and thrive on the other side of this because people won't have to interact with others. But then there's the other side saying, well, these aren't going to be professionally cleaned and sanitized. There's less quality control. So probably not. And there's this confusing mixed data on both sides of that argument. So I don't know if Airbnb, they certainly won't have the foothold they had coming out of this. But do they even survive as the market leader in the long term? I don't know.
They do.
I don't think
I
it's
think
a
they
guarantee.
do, because I'm guessing, and I haven't looked, but I'm guessing they furloughed the majority of their staff.
You would think that. I mean, they
Yeah, but
definitely
that's
stopped
not-
all advertising. They
Right.
pulled
So,
back
so when you look
all
at the
advertising.
expense, the P&L of an Airbnb, where's their
Yeah.
money go? It goes to advertising. That's their biggest spend.
Mhm.
And I would imagine payroll is their second biggest expense.
Yeah.
Okay. So they don't have traditional debt. So they're not, borrowing money from Wells Fargo. They have investment grade debt. So they're just doing forbearance agreements on those. They're not making those payments right now.
Mhm.
So chances are they're like super close to probably cash neutral on burn rate.
Yeah, maybe so.
So that, I mean, if they're doing it effectively, that should be the situation they're in. So they're not taking hits. Like,
Mhm.
So you
as
think it's the
bad.
war chest build up for advertising, that they're just making sure they have the cash to just be able to pounce into the market?
Yeah, because all the other concerns Stuart listed, you can message your way around that. I mean,
Yeah.
you easily just put out, I mean, quite honestly, if I was Airbnb, I'd be arguing that we're cleaner than hotels and we're safer than hotels because we're further apart than
But
hotels.
how can they argue more cleanliness when that's in the hands of their hosts and they don't have any way to
They're-
guarantee
They're
it?
marketers. They can say it, and they can mark hosts that have told them that they're doing a better job at cleaning, and then that's their only requirement, guys. I mean, that's actually the part of the beauty of their business model is the thing that makes them evil, which is they're just the marketing entity. Like
Mhm.
that's really all they are. So they can say they've put out massive training to all of their property owners, and these property owners went through and certified to this cleaning type. So they're a certified blah. But
Yeah,
then a little
it's not based
disclaimer
on
is-
facts. It's based on psychology, completely
Right.
psychology, and they're masters of that. They've
Yep.
done a really good job.
And
historically.
and it's going to be the same thing. I mean, it's going to be the same thing with Booking.com and Expedia. Like, listen, what needs to happen is a war of psychology, and you're talking about the strongest entities in psychology in our space.
So I have a question, and a legitimate question, not trying to get to a point or anything like this. Is a potential in our new world order as we get out of this process, and you talk about regionalities of hotspots, and this isn't going to go away until there's a cure, so to speak.
It's never going to be a cure.
Speak literally if there's not a cure. So there's going to be this kind of like where the bomb drops, and that region all of a sudden turns toxic, and nobody's going to travel to it, and people that are there want to travel out of it. And we've learned that we can work from home for some substance of our economy and so forth. Do you feel that long-term stay, maybe even Airbnb long-term monthly rentals and so forth, turned into a different dynamic where, okay, and I'm not promoting any badness, but say Orlando gets hit with a resurgence, and you're like, you know what, cities, let's just get out of the city, let's go to Atlanta for a month, get away from this. Atlanta doesn't have it happening. And we
Guys,
now go to Atlanta.
I mean,
This mobile movement thing starts happening because, hey, I can work from there. My wife can work from there. Let's just get out of this dead zone and let's go someplace else until it goes away, and then we'll go back to our home. Do you see that as being something?
no, because let me ask you a question. Where's the last place that the plague broke out again?
The last place at the plague, somewhere in Europe.
Yeah, and recently, they've had a breakout of the plague.
Yay.
Other major serious diseases that are super dangerous break out constantly in hotspots. Once it's not a global issue, it will eventually die down. Once its death rate is more controllable, it will go the way.
Right. I'm talking about before then, the up to that point.
Yeah. What caused a lot of this was the unknown and the risk of, holy crap, it's super contagious. So it being super contagious and it's unknown, like why or how it's killing people and how many it's going to kill, that is what caused this issue. Once the data from that is all out and understood, which will be 6 months to a year, you'll get real initial findings of this. When you add a known factor to this issue, it will greatly decrease the reaction that is given to breakouts of this. Once
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying between now to then, the nomadic life of a year, let's say.
Well, I think to directly answer your question, I think there'll be a fringe group of people that probably that appeals to, right? And we've already seen that. There are younger folks that don't have a fixed abode, and that's why businesses like Roam exist, where you can pay them a flat monthly fee and live in different cities at different times of the year. And so I think there's an attractive nature to that. But for the average person, anyone with kids, anyone that has stuff, it's just not practical,
Mm-hmm.
So anyone that has a social group around them that, they're fond of, that's not practical. So I think, like with many of your thoughts and ideas, I think that it's perfect for a subset of people.
An edge
but
case.
It's never going to be. It's not going to be.
Yeah.
It's always an edge case. It's never going to be a mainstream.
But I also think
up literally
it'll be highly unlikely that after this year, you'll see COVID-19 be the reason lockdowns happen again. It won't. It'll have to be a new virus that has the same exact unknown to it. Otherwise, it will be, much smaller, even big outbreaks. Because again, once it's known, once the data is solid, the problem is the data is not solid right now. Once the data is solid and reasonable treatment exists, which is not a cure, because by the way, we almost never cure viruses. Like very few viruses have ever been cured.
Even COVID in this form isn't even cured. It's never been. It's as common.
No. But what I want to be clear of is we don't cure viruses. We stop them from killing masses. We manage them. But also understand, think about this. This is likely to wrap up with far less deaths than many other prevalent, issues in our world that we no longer talk about because they exist and there's a perceived treatment.
Mm-hmm.
Once this gets to that point that, hey, you know what? Like the flu, this is likely to kill you if you're over 70. like the flu, this is likely to kill you if you're on chemotherapy, and you have heart disease. The problem is early shock and awe from this thing is it was killing people who wouldn't normally be killed by the flu. And that was the worry. And we still don't understand why those people died. Once we understand why those people died, and once there's treatment paths to curb some of that, it will go the way of other very dangerous, scary things that take out large amounts of people a year, because the public will see it as it's not unknown and there's a treatment path.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I think there are other mitigating factors as to what social impact on this is, what perception of fear is, and how well that definition of understanding how to treat this becomes. I think there's still, I'm looking at again, as you pointed out, Stuart, I look at the granular on some of this stuff of big emotions. No, nobody with kids is going to be running away from it or anything like this. But these things create different momentums. I talked to a couple of people that I work with ad hoc stuff. First they left the high density population city they were in to go help their family that was in a less dense population area. That lasts only so long because in-laws are in-laws. And so then it's like, well, then we're going to go over and find a place to live that has low density population. And because it's affordability that we can find something like that right now. But then that's only a temporary. Literally, they can put their stuff in a U-Haul. So why not? They've learned to be mobile like this, and that can create its own generational thing for a while, where people, until this gets settled out, and it's not a lot of people. I'm not thinking that, and I'm not by any stretch. I'm just throwing out the question of it. Is that we're going to create different modalities of normal out of all of this.
But here's the problem, and I'll give you a perfect example that is close and near and dear to you. Has the Florida Keys grown or shrunk in population over the last 20 years?
And they stay the same.
Because it's at capacity, isn't it?
Yeah, there's no place to go.
How many times have those people been wiped out by storms?
Oh, 2 that I can count for certain.
Can you even get reasonable insurance living there now?
Oh, not reasonable.
And yet, people still live there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
They're having the time of their lives right now, by the way, because you can't get there.
But there's a high probability that in a 10-year span, you will get hit by a major storm in the Florida Keys. And yet people still live there and want to live there and want to move there, even though history shows that quite often these islands end up getting water from edge to edge because they're so low.
I'll even add to your point. There's places you can't even build anymore because they're already tabled to be underwater in 50 years. You can't even build.
Right. And yet there are people who, if you let them, they would build there. Even telling them this is going to be underwater in 50 years.
Just put taller stilts up.
Right. Just like there are people now that would be staying in hotels in their favorite tourist destination if the law allowed them to do it, if they weren't shut it,
Yep.
There's always going to be, people, especially to Ed's point, I think once people understand a risk better and they can weigh up the risk versus the value, they're going to make decisions that are going to favor them. And I agree with Ed. For the most part, I think it's going to take a while to get to the point he's talking about because the media sensationalizes. But I do think we're going to get back to where COVID is a thing of the past, not something people worry about on a daily basis. Well, and that'll probably be 2021 before we're in that situation. But
I think before the mass is in that situation, but I think you will see pockets of population get there in phases as different things come out. Because listen, I'm going to guarantee you right now, a reasonable amount of the population, when 2 months from now, when they're looking back on the death rate and the infection rate, are going to turn around and there's going to be a reasonably large amount of the population that has zero fear for COVID.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I would say the sample size of one being me, I've even started thinking differently in the last 2 weeks as data comes in and as you start to realize the actual risk in terms of one, contagion, but two, the extreme symptoms. And as more treatments come out, it's definitely changing my opinion. But I would never a week or 2 weeks ago have considered a Disney vacation anytime soon. Like I would think I would be years away from that. But now, a conversation with Ed that happened last week where he said, hey, they're giving away the meal plans with the tickets right now. I'm like, that's a very attractive value proposition
The
for me.
best, it's the best package offer
I-
Disney's
I
ever done.
thought, I
To
thought being
know
able to
that
see that
Disney's-
in person would be the real motivator. Just make me down to
Well,
Orlando.
Well, there's multiple factors, right? So it's like I get a lot more value. The chances of it being packed are very low. So the experience is probably going to be better because I wouldn't be waiting in line. I know that Disney's probably going to be looking at what they've done in China, they're putting in a lot of protocols to at least reduce the risk, certainly not eliminate the risk, but reduce the risk into how they operate. So I'm like, this could be the best opportunity to go to Disney this year that I'm ever going to have. And 2 weeks ago, I wouldn't have even thought that way.
No, but the data is showing that we're understanding more. Where, I mean, all the latest stuff on figuring out how to keep a lot of the people who are heading towards needing to be on a ventilator, how to keep them off a ventilator. Like, God, that's going to make a huge difference in how many people die, because being on a ventilator is tricky. Even a healthy person, if I put Stuart on a ventilator today and let him stay on it for 4 days, there would be high risk keeping him alive, trying to get him off the ventilator, even though he wasn't sick. So, there are certain thresholds that will greatly reduce the very scary aspects of what we were facing. So I also don't want anyone that's listening to this to think that I think we didn't take this, or we took this too seriously. I actually think we did a fairly okay job managing.
Fairly okay job.
I don't think anyone could have done a great job.
Yeah.
Like, I really don't. I don't think anyone would have killed it, because first of all, we live in a country where it is illegal for the federal government to shut down the country. See, that wasn't an option. It wasn't. Same thing with opening it back up. The federal government can't force states to open back up. It is always going to be state managed. Did some states do a killer job on this versus others? Yep, absolutely. But the bottom line is, this was unknown. There was tons of bad information as it was coming over to us. There's still a ton we don't know. And from a medical treatment perspective, if you look at it, the flattening the curve appears to be working. The social distancing to flatten the curve appears to be working. Don't forget, that was to buy us room to figure this thing out. Like, the likelihood of us going into a national lockdown again for this virus is incredibly unlikely.
Yeah, I agree. Especially
Another
if we're
virus?
preparing for it, right? We're preparing with more PPE, with more ventilators, with better treatments, with more knowledge. I think even as we were talking earlier about there being hotspots occurring, which is very likely, you're not going to see the same level of lockdown occur. You're going to see modifications of protocols, but you're not going to see entire states shut down again once they start reopening.
One thing we absolutely learned, why New York got as bad as it did, they should have shut down their public transportation. Had they shut down their public transportation, they probably would have cut this much faster. But they left their subways and everything open and just asked people to socially distance. I'm sorry, going into a New York subway car, I don't want to touch things in normal times because they're disgusting. So let's be honest.
I'm going to go John Lennon on you, though. It's a shame as a humanity that we can't tackle single projects with the clarity that they seem to have tried to tackle this. Where look at the advancements that with one centric thought we were able to tackle more about this. Like you talk about respirators and so forth. Wars bring out better medical practices. It's a shame that we as a society can't realize that if we just freaking focused on one thing for a second, we could probably solve it.
Human nature, buddy.
And with that, I would just like to remind you that it is not too late to join our book club on The One Thing, the book, which is happening Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific. But this is your last chance to join. Just throwing that out there.
Oh, put the link in. Make sure you put the link in.
Yeah, put the link in.
Yep. All you have to do is email me at info@thinkupenterprises.com.
Yeah.
So anyways, I'm done ranting.
No, you're good. I just have I have a question. Do you think I should start publicly pushing out the fact that we're doing our noon thing still?
Yeah.
Okay.
Showing
I
up.
kind of felt there for a while. I was enjoying the fact that it was only my friends showing up.
I'm getting bored of it just being you two when I show up.
Oh man. I like talking to you, Stuart.
By the
but
way,
now-
I'm hosting
think
at
so.
4:00 today a Zoom cocktail happy hour with Lore Agency and Navis, and everyone's invited. So 4:00. It was fun. I joined last week, and they volunteered me to host this week. So
are you gonna do it on Zoom?
yeah, it'll be on Zoom. They Lore already had an account set up for it. So
Oh, okay. So, yeah, send me the link. I would love to come in and interrupt it for you.
it was
The
fun.
yeah, all right. So I'll advertise for next week on the
I think it should.
I'll advertise for next week and we'll broadcast it out. See if we can get other people too. Because I was just, like you said, BC was keeping me company when you guys didn't show up the past couple of days, which is kind of fun. Been talking to a lot of people out of BC. And they've been doing their once a week thing and stuff. It's been kind of fun to really get, if anything, not just to keep the company, but just to get the feel of people's perceptions on stuff. I mean,
it's interesting. Different groups have completely different perspectives. You can tell there's like these little echo chambers of communities, and they all think the same way. But then you go to another community of people, and it's very different. It's been really interesting.
Yeah.
Hey, I've got to jump, folks, but it's
Me
been my
too.
absolute pleasure. Can you send me the Zoom info?
I just threw it up there on the
Okay.
the chat.
Okay, got it.
Stuart.
Yeah.
It's also on my LinkedIn. I posted
Okay,
it on my LinkedIn. So
I will
Stuart,
try my best to do it.
cool.
Yes, sir.
podcast, survey, all that. Where's the link? I'll put the links in the show notes, obviously, but
Yeah, I don't actually know the link to the survey because we didn't set it up. So what I'll do is
I got it. I'll put it up in the show notes for everything as
There
well.
you go. That would be great.
Yeah, because I've been telling everybody and pushing it around. I've been trying to repost it and stuff like that because I was trying to be helpful and kind and courteous and all that kind of cool stuff.
Are you using the fuel tracking so we get all the credit for the submissions?
I did. I
Whatever link
shared.
you got. I'm just using the link you had.
I shared the fuel. I
Get
shared
all the
the
traffic
fuel
you want,
post.
dude. I don't.
There you go. I appreciate that. Yeah, so if you're in the hotel industry, obviously you are because you listen to this, then fill that out because we're interested in knowing what you did and why you did it and what you're doing next. So, and then we're going to share all that information and push it out as a study and give that to anyone that submitted as well. So you get some insight into the rest of the industry.
And I got to run too. I'll see you all.
Ed, thanks. Flip two.
Flip two. Ed St.
Flip
Ange.
two.
Bye.
And
And eventually on the Fuel podcast, he's going to make an appearance, but he refuses to give me show notes. So,
no show notes.
his loss. His
You know?
loss.
Yeah. Hey, Lily, I had one suggestion about your podcast.
Yeah.
Instead of having it the long name, just have it, things up /podcasts instead of the hospitality revenue management.
For the URL.
Yeah. Just what do you think, Stuart? Is that a good suggestion, or you think she should keep it the way it is?
Oh no, I'd keep the keywords in there, man.
Doesn't it keep the SEO?
Yeah.
How about a redirect there? Just do a redirect off of doing a things up /podcast, so you can call it, but then it goes to it, and you still keep the indexing off of the term.
Yeah,
How's that?
maybe that for verbal communication, it might be better to have a short URL.
Yeah, because when you refer to it
the irony of Lauren telling someone else to have a shorter URL is amazing.
you should see my redirectory, dude. My redirectory is rocking.
Yeah. All right, guys, I got to jump. If anyone wants to learn about us, fueltravel.com, or if you want to listen to the podcast, fueltravel.com/podcast. And not only do we have Griffin on, we're recording today, so that'll be up early next week, but we also have the lovely Lily Mockman going to be recording an episode next week. So
Pretty
that's
excited.
that's a crossover event of the century. one
That's
might say.
right.
And just to add a little clickbait, I'm going to tell you why you should all drop your prices.
Oh, foreshadowing. That is very clickbait. Love it. All right, guys, take care. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Yeah,
Take care.
Thanks, Lily. Oh, before you go, So we had Lily Mockman. We had everybody there. Ben, good to have you. Thank you. Next time we'll see if we can grab you on the camera. And we'll see everybody. Sandra, bye. And Ben, I'll talk to you next week. And thank you for the link on the voucher. I'll go over and dig into it and see if that gives me my answer. But that was one of my secret plans to take over the universe questions for you. So we'll figure out if... we'll grab a time on Monday. Love to catch up with you guys and see how you're doing. Hope you're safe and healthy and everything else. So you guys have fun. I'll talk to you soon. We're stop this thing now.